Hello patrons and welcome to your June monthly reward video. This month we chose the theme Summer with Prickles, and this honestly has been one of the most fun pictures and themes to plan out. I had this idea of doing a postcard set exclusive to patrons that would not be available outside. So I've already coloured 3 of these and figured it'd be really good to show you a small colouring tutorial on how I do it. So the paper that this has been printed on, which is available on both Rose Garden and Botanist here, is the actual paper that I use to colour on, which is Cancer Mixed Media. Now what I'm doing here is some very small circles. Now this is, if you're using alcohol markers, it's a really good way to spread the colour very evenly and cause less streaking. This will allow you to have a really nice smooth layer to work on. Now with Botanist patrons, you may notice that you have all 4 of the colouring pages, and Rose Garden you also have the colouring page as well. This colouring page is available to all patrons this month so that you can colour alongside this video. So whether or not you download and colour it yourself, or whether or not you download and use it in your own time, I'd love to see what you create with the same image. Now, because this is going to be a slightly longer video, I will be pausing talking in between. But little small circles really help a marker's colour spread evenly. Now this marker is slightly dry, so it isn't the best to show. Some of my markers are actually drying out. I need to buy some more and invest in some more pens. But as you can see, the colour really does spread beautifully and evenly all the way through the illustration. Now we're going to do that with the entirety of the illustration. Now since we're working with a nighttime piece, I'm trying to not make the colours too saturated because we're going to want that beautiful glow from the fire. We are going to be doing a mixed media piece with this. It's just mainly because it's something that I'm comfortable with, and it's something that I am very happy with learning and progressing with over the years. What I like to do is I like to put my layer of marker down first and then build up on top with my marker with watercolors and pencils. This is because with graphic markers you do get a very flat, very beautiful color, but sometimes shading, it depends on what kind of shading you do. If you want to really do really smooth shading, you're going to want to use a color between your light and your dark. So say you're going from light blue to dark blue, you're going to want a mid-range tone in between that to be able to blend. And the best way to blend is actually by doing layering. So you put your darker layer down first and then build your layer on top. I'll be showing you how I do that in a sec, just while I colour this beautiful dark background so that we have our base colour for our night sky. I'm using a deep purple because sometimes black is a little bit too harsh for a night sky, and the night sky tends to have a lot of colours in it depending on where you are from. You can use a really dark blue, but I chose a really dark purple just because I can build up on top of that with the textures with watercolours and pencils. Now the full list of equipment, as always, is listed down below, but I'm using alcohol markers, Winsor and Newton watercolors. I'm also using Prismacolors all polychromos. I tend to have them mixed both together. I enjoy using them both, to be honest. And for the lines, I used Unipin fine liner. I really like the Unipin fine liner. It's one of my all-time favorites. Now this is a way that I can show you the actual blending that I do. So I'm going to be using red, orange and yellow. So we have our red and yellow as our main massive tones, so they are our main bold colours, and then the orange is sort of a mid-tone in between. So you'll see that I'm putting my lighter layer down, and then I'm going to be building on top with my darker layer, and then I will be blending in between with the lighter layer. Now ideally with this sort of equipment you want to be working dark to light, but there is a really fun way that you can blend using the light to dark method, and this is basically you're working from your darker color to your lighter color. This helps with blending. But you can see here now what I'm doing is I'm oversaturating the marker over the top of the pens, and this will give a really nice like smoother effect. Now if you really wanted to blend even more, you're going to want mid-tones in between those two colors. So between yellow and orange, you will want a yellow orange, and between your orange and red, you're going to want like an orangey red. This will give a smoother transition in between those colors. But since we're going for fire, it makes sense for colors to be a little bit more bolder, and this would be the same if you were doing a water effect as well. Now since I am going to be using everything as a glow, I'm taking the same yellow that I used on the fire, and I'm going to be using that on Prickles himself. This will give this illusion of warmth to the illustration. It doesn't make much sense right now since the background isn't colour, and right now it looks kind of a little bit odd, but once you've put all your flat layers down, you'll be able to build up colour and build up a lot more texture. Now that we have done our background and done our flat colours on our background, we're going to be looking at the tent. Now this is the area where you are going to get a lot more glow of that fire, because you're going to be thinking about light direction. You're going to have lighting coming from the moon, and you're also going to have lighting coming from the fire. The fire is going to have a stronger light to it than the moon is, because the moon's colours tend to be quite soft, and they tend to be white. So if we were not to have a fire, we would just have the reflection from the moon, but because we have the fire there, the firelight is a lot stronger than the moonlight. So I put my base colours down and showing where immediately that light is going to be. So you can see that I've done a yellow line down the sides, and I'm doing my main dark colour of the blue. Now after this, what I do is I go over with a green. So I'm just going to grab my green, show you. Right, and I'm going to go over that yellow, and this is because the yellow area will be slightly too harsh against that blue. Now if we were to go for a green color, yellow would make more sense, but because the lighting can be quite harsh, you're going to want a gradual dissension between the blue to the lighter color. This is just because certain lighting bleaches areas a little bit more than others. Fire tends to have quite a warm glow, so you're going to want that warming effect. You're going to stay away from cool tones, you're going to go for more warm tones. And whereas like moonlight would have a quite it has quite a cool effect, so it makes everything look a lot cooler, a lot softer, a lot colder. So you're going to want, if you are going to do, say if you're going to colouring and you want it to be focused with moonlight, you're going to want to use a lot more cooler tones. If you're focusing with fire, use a lot more warmer tones. Hopefully that makes sense. It's the best way that I can describe it with lighting. Lighting is something that I personally really struggle with, and it is something that I try and improve on a lot. You can see here I am consistently layering, consistently building up to try and get the desired texture I want with pens alone. But sometimes you have to grab your watercolors, and this is just because it's able to build a nicer texture on top of your markers. This is a fantastic technique if you want to get something a little bit extra from your alcohol markers. So I'm just this is quite an old palette, I've had this for years, but you'll notice I'm building textures up on the sky. I'm going to be building textures and deepening shadows all across the illustration. This is because sometimes with alcohol markers you can get some really beautiful deep colors, but the colors only go so far and can muddy a lot with the with just the markers alone. So by building up texture with watercolor, you're able to get your more desired effect, and that's essentially what I am doing here. The good thing about mixed media paper is that it can hold quite light washes of watercolour, and it can hold alcohol markers and pencils. It's fantastic if you want a really good in-between paper. Now if I was to do this mainly in watercolours, I would use watercolour paper, but since we're going for a nice in-between of mixed media, mixed media paper is perfect for this. You would have noticed in your Patreon pack for this month that there was a lot more art, and this was because they were a lot smaller. I won't be able to do this every single month, but if I'm aiming to do smaller pieces, that's when you'd get a little bit more for this month. Also this month, your little Patreon wallpapers will be the chibi Prickles, and I am super excited about this. I really love, in particular, my favourite little image from the stickers is the surfing Prickles, and I absolutely adore them. For Patreons this month, you guys are getting exclusive stuff that wouldn't be available outside, and this is stuff that I like to try and push for you all, because I think that you should be getting something that's a little bit more special. Now next month I'm going to be doing some foiled prints. I'm going to be doing one that's exclusive to the Patreon in particular, but I'm going to have you all vote for that theme. So I'll be putting the poll up very, very soon. I'll be putting the poll up actually this week. So when you're watching this video, it's going to be a poll up to vote for the next theme. I'm thinking Star Druid, Sun Witch, some of the ideas that I've got to vote for the just the idea of the foiled background on certain prints just would look really, really nice. Now this is going to be done digitally, so we're going to be getting a digital art month next month, but I want your suggestions on what you would like to see for future content for the Patreon. Now I think that these little videos that you guys get are exclusive to you, no one else gets to see them, but if you want more tutorial videos like this, just let me know. Now if you ever go with your watercolours, you can dab them slightly with paper or with tissue, and this creates a really beautiful textured effect. I do recommend that if you are going to be playing around with watercolours, maybe try some techniques on some watercolour paper, just so you have an idea of what works best for you. The good thing is about these techniques that I use, anyone can apply them to their work and they can utilise them in their own ways. These are techniques I just really like, because I feel like one medium sometimes isn't enough, and I love to build up texture. It's one of my favorite things about traditional art, or the texture, and I try to apply that as well to my digital work, which is why when I'm using Procreate, I love the textured brushes. I'm actually looking into buying some brushes, so if you guys have any suggestions on brush packs, like, let me know. I get so fascinated and excited with all the things that are out there. But now we just keep on building that beautiful texture up, cooling areas that are far away from the fire, and like warming areas that are closer. This is just to build that illusion of depth, and especially with that fire, we want that fire to feel warm and inviting as much as possible. Now we can deepen the shadows a little bit more if you really want to go nuts. I tend to stick with like mid shadows, so not too heavy on the shadow areas, but everyone has their own preferences. You could really go harsh with the shadows in this, and I reckon it would look stunning. So now we let the watercolours dry, you can see that we've got this really nice textured effect on the background and in other areas. So next up is using pencils. Now pencils on top of markers can create a really beautiful effect. They give this sort of texture on top of the markers that you cannot achieve with watercolours alone. Plus with polychromos and Prismacolors, because they are oil based, they build up on top really beautifully on top of these colours. So what I'm just doing is I'm just trying to deepen the fire effects. I kind of dropped the ball on this and it hasn't turned out quite the way I want it. So I'm trying to build up the texture on top. Now the good thing is with polychromos and Prismacolors, you can build up all these beautiful textures and apply them on top, and because they are so opaque, you can build them up really nicely. So what I'm just basically doing is going over everything, deepening certain shadows, making things look slightly brighter that I want to look slightly brighter, and just yet again building up those textures again and again. This is super important with an illustration, and you can just keep on building beautiful textures with your pencils. Now if you don't have pencils, that is absolutely fine. You can easily build up all this texture with markers. That is no problem at all, and you can also build up this texture with watercolors as well. But I find that these pencils just sometimes they just bring out that color that I'm really after. last but not least, I'm going to be using my, these are acrylic pens. Now, I break out the acrylic pens when, after everything I've done, I haven't quite finished that final thing that I want. Now, acrylic pens are known they're just basically pens filled with liquid acrylic. And the most famous one that people would know is Posca. Now, the pens I'm using here are the Thule art pens. Now, I just use these to highlight certain areas, brighten certain areas that maybe I went a little bit too dark with. It's really good for correcting like slight mistakes. Now, I know that some pieces are never perfect, and sometimes with colouring you're going to make mistakes, and that is absolutely fine. Colouring traditionally can be quite difficult because once you've made that mistake, it is very difficult to rectify that mistake. And that's why I really like mixed media, because sometimes I can get the desired effect by just playing around. Now, you can use acrylic paints here if you want to build up on top to say lighten certain areas which you've darkened too much. Like me in particular, I can see that the moon needed like lightening in certain areas because it was too yellow, and then I needed to bring out stars, and I'm using lots of different colors for stars because stars aren't just the same color all the way around. They have lots of different lights and lots of different textures, but I basically use the acrylic markers to lighten certain areas that I have gone too dark with, and this is a really good technique, especially with alcohol markers. If you want that quite graphical effect, you can certainly achieve that with acrylic markers. Hopefully this tutorial has been a little bit helpful for everyone, because I get asked quite a bit about my colouring techniques, because I use a lot of traditional media and I love to mix colours up, because I sometimes find that I can never get the effect I want with just one thing. So it's always good to mix things up. So we're just going to carry on with the acrylic markers, as I said, lightening certain areas that I went too dark with, trying to fix this fire because right now it looks too muddy, and just keep building up all those lovely textures. And it's coming to the finalized product, but it wouldn't be a video if Inspector Bella does not come in and check out what we have done today. Now, my cat gets very curious about everything I'm doing and loves to come and sit on my desk and observe the work and judge. So I don't know if she approves yet. Shall we see if she approves? She always blocks the camera if she approves, and she definitely does. So after some scritches and some well-needed cuddles, here is the final product of all that colouring that we did. So I really hope that this video has been somewhat helpful and goes a little bit more in depth of the process that I've done. I'm really grateful for all you patrons to support me. It means the entire world. And if you want to see other videos like this in the future, please let me know. Thank you all so much. I hope you have an absolute wonderful day. And as always, folks, stay creative.